I was an extra in the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. I know, no autographs. I'm just a normal person like all of you. I put my pants on one nipple at a time and wipe my ass crack after a hard shit with both hands. But I figured I'd go into detail about this. I've talked about it on the official podcast a little bit, but I've never really dove into what it meant to be the world's most spit-on extra. When it comes to being a useless extra in a movie, I'm the cream of the crop. I'm the cream supreme. Does that mean that I'm the best actor in the entire world of acting? I like to think so, but on paper, no, absolutely fucking not. So this story starts like every other good story, every other fairy tale. I had just drained my nuts at a hard jerk-off session, and that's not a joke because I genuinely did jerk off. And in that like brief 5 or 10 minutes of just pure euphoria where you feel like you know everything in the universe, like you see the strings that hold it all together, I decided, you know what? I want to pursue some acting. So like every 21st century man, I turned to Google and I was looking up open casting calls and found one for Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. It was in Atlanta, and they wanted headshots and full body shots shirtless. I didn't really know how to do this because I didn't have either of those, and I didn't really want to ask my friends because Tinder wasn't exactly around at that time, so I couldn't just play it off as, hey bro, I'm just trying to slay some punani out here, take these cool shirtless pics of me, let me flex real hard real quick. So I didn't want to ask my friends for anything like that, so I thought it'd be significantly less weird to ask my dad to do it. So my dad was snapping some cool shirtless pictures of me like every good father and son relationship, but what I didn't think of at the time is my dad's 6'5", he's tall as shit, and I'm 5'6", I'm short as shit, and he was taking them at regular eye level, so he was looking down on me, which made me look even shorter than I am, so I looked like a fucking action figure in these photographs. They ended up choosing me to play an extra, and when I went to the fitting, they had a hard time actually getting me anything because they had already banked on me being 4'1". So that was kind of nice and flattering when they're like, wow, you're taller in person, because that's something I've never heard in my entire fucking life. Usually it's, wow. Yikes. But anyway, we do eventually find some clothes that fit me, luckily, as if that was a Herculean task. You could have just gone to Toys R Us and found some shit for me. But anyway, we move on from there. We go to the filming. It was about a week after the fitting, and the scene took place in this podunk shithole rust-filled factory that they were using for this location. I guess they had just nicely asked all the homeless people that lived there to leave, and kindly asked the heroin addicts not to come back for the course of the next week. So anyway, the scene I'm in, Katniss goes to this factory. It's District 8. It's supposed to be a hospital where she's looking over shit. I'm gonna play a clip from it here.
You here to fight with us?
I am. I will.
Here I played just a helping hand, some goofy goober who had no clue what he was doing but was supposed to be caring for a burn victim. They gave me a slight line to read. I guess it wasn't supposed to be like a SAG type line, SAG being Screen Actors Guild, where you need 3 lines to automatically enter it, so it doesn't really count, unfortunately, and it never would have even if it did make the fucking final cut, which it didn't. I will never forgive them. Boycott Hunger Games because they took out my part. But anyway, my line was somewhere along the lines of, this girl needs help, she's burned, yikes, oh shit, it's a burn, I don't know what I'm doing, I am not a doctor, it's a burn, help, basically just crying for help. That didn't make the final cut, neither did a lot of other people's lines. There's an elderly man next to me that had a line. You can actually see him in the final cut here. But anyway, I was on a mission to solidify a spot in the final cut of this movie, so I was doing everything necessary, no holds barred. If I had to start rimming people, I'd start rimming them. If I had to start flipping tables and wet willying bitches, I was gonna do it. I was getting into this fucking movie's final cut, no matter what. So what I would do is I would chase around the action in my designated area. So the elderly man that had lines, I would keep scooting closer to him in between takes that way I'd be there. They didn't use his line, so that slapped me right in my fucking face, unfortunately. I also really goofed around probably too hard. I would be like screaming kind of loud because they're like, be chaotic, be wild. And I was just like, fuck, oh shit, fuck, sometimes. And obviously that didn't make the final cut. I thought there'd be a slim chance of that though, maybe in the background like an Easter egg. But I didn't put too much real estate in that. I didn't expect that to make it. But what I did attempt and really thought would make it to the final cut is when this kid right here, the kid who says, are you here to fight, are you going to fight with this Katniss? I was originally positioned where this one girl's head is poking out. That was supposed to be me. But my plan was, I knew this kid was going to be in the movie no matter what, because he's an actual actor. They paid him to do these lines. So my plan was to sit up as straight as possible, as erect as I've ever been in my life. The world's most perfect posture. So that way my head would be at like his titty level. So every time they'd have his lines going, you would see me. You'd have to see me. Unless they were going to fucking pixelate me like a UFO documentary, you were going to see me. But what they ended up doing is they told me to switch with the person they ended up putting there, which is this person that's poking their head out, all very cautiously, just trying to avoid it. I was trying to get in it, they're trying to stay out of it. They changed me because I was blocking their shot, I was too intrusive, so they ended up putting me a little more ahead. That's not to say I didn't make the final cut though, it was at the end of the day a mission successful. If you pause the movie right here, you can see my arm doing the, is it the, I don't remember, one of these or whatever the fuck the symbol is for Hunger Games, but yeah, you can see me poking it out there. And yeah, that was my extra role in the Hunger Games Mockingjay, and I probably ruined a little bit of that scene. Not by design, but I was out for number one. I was going to be the world's most impressive extra on this movie. Unfortunately, they outsmarted me. But I do honestly kind of feel like maybe I did ruin a couple of the scenes that were supposed to be in there, because like I said, there was a lot more lines, but I'd keep fucking scooting closer to them, and I guess they probably didn't like me being in every single line, which honestly I can totally understand, and that's not something that crossed my mind. I never thought that I would maybe potentially ruin someone else's line by just being there, but I can totally see how that could have happened. So if you did have a line in this movie that didn't make it and you suspect it's because I kept photobombing the shit out of it, that's on me, and I'm sorry about that. But I mean, hey, it's Hollywood, you know? It's a dog-eat-ass world out there. I was just gunning for it, and it did not pan out the way I was hoping it would. But anyway, at least you can see my arm in there. That's it. So yeah. I was going to wait a little while to talk about this because I have a sneaking suspicion this won't be the last desperate marketing attempt we'll see from this film. But I just can't resist the urge anymore. It's like trying to hold in a sneeze, just trying to fight my desire to make fun of what I just saw a couple days ago. To set the stage, Pixar has released a new film, and it's become the second worst opening in all of Pixar history. It's looking to be a bit of a flop here. And there's a very good chance that you haven't even heard of the new Pixar film. It's called Elemental. It really flew under the radar. The marketing budget had to be like 5 popsicle sticks and like word of mouth. I don't really know what they were thinking here or expecting, because most people didn't even know this was on the horizon here. There was about as much hype for Elemental as there is going to the DMV. Most people didn't even know it was coming, and the ones that did just didn't really care to go see it, so it's not performing super well. And it appears that the higher-ups at Disney are starting to panic. So they're dusting off the oldest tricks in the marketing book here to try and convince people that the film is popular and worth going to a theater to see, because a lot of people would probably choose to go to a fucking dentist's office as opposed to going to a theater to see Elemental right now. So they're trying everything. And that's when they came up with this absolute shining stinker of a viral marketing campaign idea.
Save it for the wedding. Hey! Yo, yo, yo!
Before finishing the clip, I just have to call this out immediately. This is a legitimate post from the official Pixar Elemental Twitter post saying, #Claude's got the whole theater rooting for him. Check him out in Elemental. And this is like supposed to be one of those POV things in a theater where sometimes you'll see a viral video during a big moment in a movie where someone gets their phone out to film the audience reaction. Like, you know, here's how the audience responded to Tony Stark coming back from the dead, and the crowd's going crazy like, whoa, yeah, Tony's back, wee! And it's supposed to like capture that moment. That's what they tried here with this film. This is supposed to be like authentic, like look at how hyped the crowd got to see Claude from Elemental. Which makes no fucking sense, because this film is brand new. It doesn't tie into anything. No one would know who the fuck Claude is going into this film. And yet, for some reason, we're supposed to believe that the entire audience just blew up? Like, this sounds like they just watched their home team win the Super Bowl. All just because they got to bear witness to Claude popping out of some pot? It just doesn't make any sense, but I love how they try to pass it off like, man, look at how everyone loves Claude. They can't get enough of Claude. Look at him go crazy. And then it's just like stock cheering sound effects you can find on like any royalty-free database for stock sounds ever. It's beautiful. Like, this reminds me of that Morbius clip where someone made a fake Morbius voiceover from the theater where they were filming the screen, and then he says, it's Morbin time. And the crowd goes like, yeah, yeah! And since barely anyone had seen that film since it was such a box office disaster, a lot of people actually believed that that line was in the movie. Even to this day, they still think that that clip that went viral is real. And he actually says, it's Morbin time. I mean, sorry to ruin Christmas for you, that's actually not there. That was just made as a joke. Where it's supposed to be like, look at how great Morbius is, more billion fans all over the place, the biggest franchise of all time, and that was just supposed to be like a joke, like cheering thing for that line. That's not real. But Disney's taking that energy and trying to use it as an actual marketing arm for this film because it's floundering so hard in the box office. So let me just play the rest of it real quick before we go back to talking about it.
Anyway, June Bloom is coming, and you just got to be my date. Cause check it out. I'm all grown up. And I smell good.
What in tarnation? That's such an abrupt chaos ending there. That reminds me of like a scene out of a disaster movie. Like a Roland Emmerich film in like 2012 when an entire city blows up and everyone's screaming all at once before they all die. That is just like almost haunting. But anyway, yeah. The crowd's apparently going fucking nuts for Claude here. And I love that they even have like the stock baby giggle sound effect, like they pulled out all of the stops. This couldn't have taken more than 15 seconds to make, and it actually might have just been made by one of the higher-ups' child during like study hall at middle school. They're actually using it. They're legitimately trying to pass this off as a real thing and marketing for the film. I fucking love the caption, "The theater when Claude finally shows up in Elemental." Nobody knows who Claude is. Why would they be sitting there waiting on bated breath, counting down the seconds for the moment that Claude finally graces them with his presence? This is a complete new property, a new character they've never seen before. Why would they blow a gasket in excitement for it? This isn't like a moment in a beloved franchise or like a cameo fan service moment, you know, like Across the Spider-Verse where people will point at the screen and be like, oh, holy shit! That's Spider-Man Turbo X5 from that 2008 obscure fanfic Tumblr moment. They listen to us! Ah! Like, no one's doing that for Claude. It's not happening. I also can't help but just love that they even go a step further. Instead of just, like, pretending that people gave a fuck about Claude, they then go even further where they start making, like, sound effects as, like, the spectators during the film. The most annoying audience reactions ever. Such as, like, ooh? When he's like flirting with the main character here, I guess. Like nobody does that. Like that's so rare. What the fuck? Just a complete brazen disregard for the audience intelligence to try and convince people that this is real is it's admirable. I can't help but be impressed that they're actually trying this on TikTok, but I can't even blame them for trying. I don't even hold them at fault for this, because a lot of users on TikTok suffer from legitimate brain rot. That's going to be a studied phenomenon in 10 years. Mark my words. Put it on your calendar. 10 years we're going to be studying the effect that TikTok has had on the brain and the development of children and people across the world. One of the biggest goddamn trends on TikTok for a while, a couple years ago, was this. Where it was like pretending that your hand just went through your other hand, and it blew so many people's minds. That one thing I just did right there has like 10 billion views across all the people that did it on there. So I do believe that this probably wasn't the worst idea for Disney Pixar to try and convince them that like, oh man, people must really love Claude. I kind of want to get in on that hype. I don't want to feel left out. And look at how the audience responded to him. Claude must be fucking amazing. This is the second coming of Christ. I might need to get to a theater now to see this. Mom, Dad, let's go. We gotta go to the theater right now. Claude needs us. We gotta see Elemental. Quick, what's the next showing? like, I gotta get in on the hype. It might work. And maybe it has, because yesterday there was an article that came out saying that Elemental is actually making a bit of a resurgence in the box office. So it's still a massive net loss right now. It's got about 166 million total box office off of a $200 million production budget, which you usually double for marketing, but in this case, probably not. They didn't really market it much. So even still, it is in the red, but it's starting to bounce back a little bit. Thanks largely to Claude, I imagine. Claude's doing a lot of heavy lifting for this film, I guess. That just goes to show you the power of Claude. When you bet on Claude, you're guaranteed a win, it seems. Now, I know Mickey Mouse is going to public domain pretty soon. They're going to have to retire Mickey Mouse pretty soon for Disney. Maybe they'll just pick Claude as the next, like, actual Disney mascot. Like, the face of Disney might be Claude within the next couple of years. So, I'm seeing a lot of potential with the character. We can clearly see how much people love Claude. Like, goddamn. You know, maybe I'm wrong. I fully admit there's a chance that I'm very wrong, and this is all a very real audience reaction to seeing Claude. Maybe that's just how we as human beings are programmed to respond to something as perfect as Claude, right? I haven't seen the film yet, but I gotta be honest, that marketing tactic's almost working on me. I kind of want to get over there real quick to see, you know, how great Claude is. He's not even the main character of the film, and I guess he really steals the show. But yeah, anyway, I just had to talk about this a little bit. I'm curious to see if they're going to do any other Hail Mary marketing plays for this film if it continues to not do well in the box office. So yeah, excited for that if it happens. That's about it. So yeah. In the wacky world of acting, there's quite a few different categories actors fall in, like B-list actors, for example, very strong performers, but typically find themselves entering into either pornography or very abstract indie movies that are only understood by people on the verge of an overdose. You have your A-list performers, which is your headliners, the ones that will absolutely put asses in seats just because their name's attached to it, such as Leonardo DiCaprio, The Rock, Brad Pitt, the kind of actors where people will go out of their way to see every single one of their movies. Even if the movie sucks shit, they'll convince themselves it was great just because that A-list actor was in it. And then above A-list, there exists another higher level of actor. This is the S-tier, S-list actors, which is composed of only two people, Brendan Fraser and myself. So what makes us S-tier actors, S-listers? It's when we enter into a movie, we elevate it beyond just simple cinema. When Brendan Fraser or Charles White is on screen, we take it from just a simple movie for entertainment to a thought-provoking, philosophical challenging of the audience's perception of reality. You'll go into Brendan Fraser or Charles White film An Atheist, and you'll leave a Scientologist. It just becomes a life-altering experience just because of Brendan Fraser or Charles White's presence on screen. Now, I'm happy to announce, I'm coming out of retirement, baby. Yes, I said no to Ryan Reynolds begging to be in his Free Guy movie, and I wasn't entirely truthful as to why. It was because I was too busy lending my expertise to another film called Last of the Grads. And I'd like to share the trailer with you all right now. Now, keep in mind, I am not the leading role in this film. I'm not the protagonist. I'm not the front man. I do have a sizable chunk, and I would say I am the glue that holds the movie together, much like The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. But I didn't want the leading role in the film, even though I believe I could have done a tremendous performance portraying an 18-year-old high school girl. I just decided I want to ease back into this acting business. I don't need to go in with my nutsack and cock in the water. So instead, I'm playing an officer who has a sizable chunk of screen time, and I'd like to share the trailer with you all right now.
Last day. Last day, everybody. We made it. All those hours, all those days. Come on. Come on, last day. Oh.
See anything you like?
Rumor has it Steve Clayton walked you home from school today.
Who told you that?
I have my sources. Is it true?
Yes, it's true.
I do not believe this. Tell me everything.
There's not much to tell. I mean, he came up to me and walked with me and we talked.
Emma,
Yes?
are you going to the lock-in tonight?
Oh, shit. The Coast to Coast Killer just put out another message.
Oh, this again.
Wait, listen. The message says, call me Mutt. To burn inside. Find the keys, find the prize. A house by the sea, it's all in the eyes. Can you believe this, freak? I really don't think those kids should be alone in high school. What do you want to do? Shut it down?
Lock-in's been a Shelby tradition for nearly 50 years. It's all these kids have to look forward to. You really want to go screw with that up your hunch?
Why do I even teach anymore? What is the point of this? What the fuck happened to you, Greg? You cry when it rains. You cry when it doesn't rain. You cry when you're dreaming. Cry when you're awake.
Shit.
I already know what you're thinking. Holy shit, was that even Charlie on screen? I thought I was watching an actual officer on duty going through some traumatic experiences, and just know, it was me, and that's called acting. It's just that I have this near superhuman ability to fully assimilate into the character I'm portraying and become one with them. And I understand it can be scary how powerful it is when it comes to my ability to blend in as a character. I could fucking portray Elton John, and then go to Elton John in person and convince him I was the real Elton John and he was an imposter. I am just able to truly tap into the latent feelings of every character and really bring them to life. In fact, bring them beyond life. And for those of you that have seen a Charles White performance, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the kind of performance that leaves you wet in the trousers and wet in the face, tears streaming constantly because the performance is just so powerful and gripping. And speaking of gripping performances, you'll also have noticed from the trailer that Andrew also has a sizable role in the film as well. Now, I am an officer and he's a teacher. We don't mingle together. We don't have a scene where we're making out or anything like that, so I don't want to get expectations too high for a romance between Andrew and I in the film, but we do both inhabit the same cinematic universe here. And I spared no expense in this performance as Officer Greg in this movie. I tell you what, I went all in on this one. I trained with some of the most cutthroat officers, seasoned veterans. I wanted the officers that had seen some real fucked up shit. I wanted to train under the officer that went to Ed Gein's estate and saw all like the human flesh furniture and stuff, just so I could really see what it was like and what they went through in that mind state and start method acting my way into Officer Greg. So that way when you see Officer Greg in this movie, you're not just seeing Charles White playing a character. You're seeing fucking Officer Greg in some traumatic moments. You can really feel it, is what I'm saying. You can fucking smell it through the performance, honestly. It truly just exudes excellence. So I just wanted to share all of this with you because I always get super fucking excited about things like this. So yeah, I'm in this upcoming horror movie here where I play Officer Greg, and I really do think I elevate this movie to the next level. This could be a Sundance winner. This could be an Oscar-winning performance from me as Officer Greg. Like, there's so much potential. I was just super happy to be a part of this because it was a lot of fun. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but just expect Officer Greg to get real rowdy in this movie. Officer Greg is a loose cannon who doesn't take shit from anybody. And he may or may not be one of the coolest characters to ever enter into the horror scene. When it comes to horror, you have your staples. You know, you got Freddy Krueger, Leatherface, Mike Myers, Neil Breen, Tommy Wiseau, and soon you'll have Officer Greg. I mean, I tell you what, Officer Greg, he's a fucking great character, and I really think I was able to bring him to life. And yeah, so if you're interested, it's called Last of the Grads, and yeah, it was just a lot of fun. I wanted to share it with all of you. That's about it. So yeah. Today I experienced what it must have felt like for early human scholars like Aristotle, when they'd sit and ponder the deep, complex issues plaguing society, as well as taking notice of things going on around them and trying to make sense of all of it. And today, my philosophical thought experiment was, why is every single new movie that's coming out flopping? With the exception of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, most new movies that are coming out over the last few months are setting new records for how dog shit they're performing in the box office. These bad boys are flopping harder than LeBron James against the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs. It's getting rough. And I just read this headline here about a movie I didn't even know existed being DreamWorks' lowest opening for anything they've ever made, called Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken. It brought in just $5.2 million so far on opening weekend. And this is a $70 million budget, and that doesn't account for any of the marketing costs. So this is looking like a historic bomb here. And this isn't alone. Elemental is still in theaters and is not performing well. It was Pixar's second lowest opening ever, I believe. Like, what's going on here? It was a question that I wanted an answer to, so I got deep into exploring the inner machinations of my mind in order to get an answer. I was nearly ready to draw a bath and really get after it, really exercise my noodle. And following this thought line to its natural conclusion, you reach two questions. Are movies just getting worse, which is why people don't really care to go see them? Or do people just not really have an interest in going to a movie theater anymore? Pretty much everything we do in our day-to-day lives has become extremely convenient, whether it's ordering food or just general entertainment. You can watch pretty much every show and movie from the comfort of your own home. And you don't have to pay individually for each movie you want to see because eventually they hit streaming platforms that you have a subscription to. So, going to a movie theater is inconvenient. You have to drive to the theater. It's also expensive because the ticket prices just keep increasing exponentially. And God have mercy on your soul if you get a little appetite or a little thirsty and decide to buy something from the concession stand, because then you're out another $50 buster, because that shit is outrageously priced. It is downright criminal how expensive things are at a movie theater. I went to see a movie today. I saw the new Indiana Jones. I'll get to that in a moment, but it's what put this discussion top of mind for me. And I bought a water bottle. And not only did they have the gall, the fucking chutzpah, to sell me a Dasani water bottle, but they charged me $8 for the Dasani water bottle. That is sewage. Dasani is literally sewage in a bottle, and I paid $8 for the sludge. I really would have rather paid $8 for each employee there to spit into a cup and I'd drink that. Not only would it taste better than Dasani, but I'd feel less scammed. Point is, it's expensive going to a movie theater, and it's inconvenient. So, is that the reason why a lot of people are choosing not to go, leading to so many box office disasters recently? It's a lot of questions that I've been looking at answers for the last few hours since coming back from the movie. And I wanted to just kind of talk about it because I find it so interesting. So let's dive into the first question. Are movies just getting worse? And is that the reason why people aren't bothering to go? Because it's not worth their time to see it? I think the answer to that is probably no. But I do think movies are getting less original. Because the budgets for films have gone up so much, like most films are like $70 million plus budgets. Most of the time even going north of 100 mil, 200 mil, and in the case of like Indiana Jones, 300 mil. These are, and it's an outrageous amount of clams in order to produce a modern blockbuster. So when you're gambling with that amount of money on a movie, most of the higher-ups like to make sure that it's the safest possible investment they can make with it. So they choose to either make sequels or reboots or remakes, something that they know has a built-in core audience. So that's why you see most of what hits theaters these days is kind of derivative of other properties or just straight up a sequel. And I think that leads to a lot of people feeling like they've just kind of already been through this song and dance before. You're not getting a ton of unique experiences from huge blockbusters anymore. And I think that does play a role in it, but I don't think that necessarily means the movies themselves are worse. They're just so much safer. They just play everything super safe and by the book. Now, that's of course not talking about every movie that hits theaters. There's still a lot of companies that are doing lower budget productions that are far more creative and original. Of course, things like A24 and production houses like that. But on the whole, most of the big blockbusters are very generic, and it's food that you've had before. You're basically just getting junk food that you know isn't exactly like the best thing there is, but it's still good enough for a lot of people, and it has been that way for a long time. But I feel like at this point, people are just losing that sweet tooth. They don't really care to just keep seeing the same shit over and over again. Like superhero movies. Superhero movies, even the worst ones, used to still turn a massive profit. It was an infinite money glitch for a while, but now it's been patched. Superhero films aren't guaranteed to make you money. Case in point, The Flash. The Flash came out, and it had a crazy marketing campaign behind it. They had all kinds of celebrities singing its praises, celebrities that you would think would hate it. Like Stephen King was going crazy about it, talking about how good it was. Tom Cruise really loved it, saying, you know, this is a certified semen siphoner. It's gonna make you nut, trust me. Kojima just posted a tweet talking about how great it was. Just so many celebrities talking about it being great, which I still believe was some kind of like paid marketing campaign that they haven't disclosed. I still find it so hard to believe after seeing the movie that all of these celebrities lost their fucking mind over it. Like, it's a fine film, but nothing that I think really changed the whole landscape. But they were talking about it like it reinvented the whole superhero genre. And it still bombed in the box office. Now, of course, there are other factors at play, like Ezra Miller and the crime spree Ezra Miller went on that went completely unpunished. There are certain things like that at play with The Flash, but I still think even if that wasn't the case, the movie probably wouldn't have been a glowing success then either. I think there is legitimately superhero fatigue because most people are assuming that they've already seen all of this kind of shit before, so probably aren't going to bother going through the inconvenience and the extreme cost of driving to a theater, paying for the tickets, when instead they could just wait for it to conveniently drop on their favorite streaming platform and watch it from home without spending a fucking dime, really, aside from the subscription cost. And to extend this a bit deeper for today's experience, like I mentioned, I saw Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It's the 5th entry into the Indiana Jones franchise. I actually saw it with my parents. This is the first movie we've seen together since the Avengers movie, the first one, back in like 2012. So we decided to go to the theater and see it together because we all really like Indiana Jones. And it turns out the film is really struggling a bit with a $60 million debut. Now this isn't exactly like a hard turbo flop or anything, but it's opening to less than what Kingdom of the Crystal Skull opened to back in 2008. And for a lot of people, that movie is considered a legitimate abomination in the Indiana Jones franchise, so I think there is a chance that people just wrote off the franchise after that one and maybe didn't even bother giving this a chance. I'm really not sure. But yeah, the movie is not performing nearly as well as they expected it to, despite the film's budget being like $300 million, which doesn't even account for the marketing costs, at least according to the numbers I'm seeing online. So this is a movie that needed to generate huge buzz, tons of doubloons, in order to turn any semblance of a profit, and it's not looking likely at the moment. So after watching the film, I'll give you like a little pseudo moist meter here. It's a fine movie. I don't think it's very good, but I don't think it's bad either. Like, I wouldn't say that this is an example of a movie that's so shitty that people probably just wouldn't bother going to a theater to see it. It's one of those movies where it doesn't really try to do anything interesting. It plays it very, very safe. You go there, you'll be entertained for the runtime, but it's not something that you'll really remember on the drive home. It's something that's easily forgotten. There's nothing wrong with it. I think there's a lot of goofy moments in it that don't make a whole lot of sense, as well as a couple of plot holes, but I'm not here to do a spoiler review for this. I'll just say overall, it's probably the second worst Indiana Jones movie. I still think it's probably a little bit better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but not by much. It doesn't even come close to the original trilogy. But again, I don't think it's like, you know, an affront to God or anything. It's not horrible. So this wouldn't really be something that I would think would be an example of movies are just getting worse and that's why no one's going to see them. But I do think this is an example of this is a very safe, generic movie that most people probably wouldn't bother to see. In movie theaters, that is. This would be something you'd flip on when you're, you know, just perusing your streaming platform of choice. And you'd throw it on for, you know, some background noise. Or if you need something to kill fucking like 3 hours. This movie is way too long. I'm not just gonna give a whole Indiana Jones review here, but point is, I don't think this is a movie that's so bad that it's scaring people away from going to see it. It's just, I do think it's not a movie that would get people excited to go. They tried to revive a beloved franchise again, and that bet is no longer working these days. Most people have seen through shameless cash grabs that just try and like piggyback off the goodwill of a great franchise that they knew and loved. And I think that's one of the big things that people are now just being kind of more conscientious of. Like, I know it's probably not going to be as good as the originals, so I'm not going to go out of my way to pay a ton of money for the tickets. And I'm certainly not going to pay a ton of money for the drinks and food. Because I swear to God, with the prices the way they are, you'd have to choose between paying for a bottle of Dasani or paying for a handful of rare earth minerals. Like, there's going to be like the same cost of a diamond at some point for a fucking bottle of Dasani at a movie theater. But yeah, I don't think that the main deterrent for people going to a theater is movies getting shittier, but I do think them refusing to take big, like, blockbuster risks on new IP or, like, more bold creative projects is definitely something that is not doing them any favors. But I think by far the biggest contributing factor is it's pricing people out. And it's just not convenient anymore, whereas everything else in the world is just getting more and more convenient. Whereas going to a movie theater is going the opposite direction. It's getting less and less convenient and more expensive. So it's just one of those things where I think that's the biggest thing at play here for a lot of these flops that have been happening. Not necessarily that the projects are shittier. Like, Ruby Gilman could be an absolute masterpiece. I have no fucking idea. But I don't feel like going to a theater to see it because it just doesn't really capture me as, like, worth the inconvenience of going there for it. Same with Elemental. Elemental just seems like a really kind of generic film. And that's not enough to get me, like, you know, in the car, you know, and putting my ass in the seat in order to watch it just to see if it is generic or if it's, like, great. I I don't really feel like bothering with that, and I feel like that's the way a lot of people feel because it's expensive and it's inconvenient. So that's kind of my guess for the flops. Just something I was thinking about today watching Indiana Jones and learning that it was not doing super hot in the box office, and I thought for sure Indiana Jones was going to be a shoo-in for profit, but clearly not. I think the age of being able to just kind of phone it in for movies and blockbusters and being able to make, tons of money off of very lazy writing or very generic storytelling and productions, I think that age is kind of behind us now. I think in order to stand out in the box office, it's being proven recently that you need a very strong, good movie. Like Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. That film is absolutely exploding. Another good example is Puss in Boots 2. Like, I think now we're entering an age where people are only going to go to a theater if it really seems like something special that will be worth their time and they'll get a great experience out of it. As opposed to how it used to be where people just kind of go to a theater to see anything, even if it looked kind of generic, because, they were in malls and everyone was out and about, like in malls and shit. So, I'll check out the newest superhero film just because it's there, and it'll probably just be, some mindless entertainment for a little while. And it wasn't that expensive back then compared to now. So I just think times are changing in the movie industry, and the top level execs aren't really realizing that. So they're just pouring more money into generic films, safe films, things they perceive as safe, and they're not getting the returns that they're expecting anymore, which I think is an overall good thing. I'd love more creative projects. I think everyone would. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. That's it. See ya. Today I did something that I was pretty sure I wasn't going to enjoy. And I think taking these kind of risks is important for growth, where you step outside of your comfort zone and try something new, even if you're convinced you're not going to like it. I did that today. I cannonballed into the swimming pool of yuckiness and did something rather foul. Now, this isn't anything huge. It's not like I was some kind of brave, courageous warrior that really put it all on the line today to try something new. I didn't go hog wild and wacky like sticking my dick in a gas station glory hole or anything. I watched a show that I was very sure I was probably going to dislike. I asked myself, how bad could Netflix's lowest rated original be? And that show is The Witcher Blood Origin. Right now it has a 32% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 13% audience score. It was also lower in the critics side. It used to be down to like 16%, but then I guess some glowing reviews came scooting in there, maybe even paid reviews, I have no idea. And it's not like I really put a whole lot of stock into Rotten Tomatoes scores, by the way. Rotten Tomatoes gives Big Mouth a 100% every single season except for one. And Big Mouth is the worst thing humanity's created since the Brazen Bull torture device. I swear, watching Big Mouth is up there with being waterboarded. It's just a cruel and unusual punishment, yet it gets rewarded every season on Rotten Tomatoes with a perfect score. It's mind-blowing. But now I'm getting off on a tangent. The point is, I don't put a whole lot of faith in Rotten Tomatoes as like a reviewing source, but The Witcher Blood Origin has been shit on across the board from everyone, and I wanted to see just how bad it was, because I wrote this off immediately, as did everyone else, because it proudly disregards the source material that it's supposed to be borrowing from. It uses the Witcher IP, and then wipes its ass with it. So this is a spin-off story. It's a prequel to The Witcher. It's set about 1200 years before the events of The Witcher, and it's not based on anything, and I don't typically get upset about that. I think it's fine if you want to take a universe and then tell your own original story in there. That's fine, but it always has to at least pay respect to the source material, something that Blood Origin fails to do on any level whatsoever. And it also has to at least fit and make sense in the universe, like justify its existence. Why is it there? And does it play by the universe's rules? Well, across the board here, the answer is pretty much no. Like, this feels like it was a complete nothing sandwich that they decided to serve up. I don't really get what the point was. There's a couple of moments where I was entertained. Like, I'm not going to pretend like the entire thing was this pile of dog shit. But on the whole, it really was worthless, like a waste of time. Now, I want to be clear here because I'm sure if you just heard what I said there and you've seen the show, you probably raised an eyebrow really high. Like, in entertainment, enjoyment, in Witcher Blood Origin, did we watch the same show? Let me explain, because now I need to defend myself, because there's almost nothing to like about it, except for one thing, the mindless goofiness to its action. When there is action in Blood Origin, it's about as mindless as it can possibly get. And when the rest of the show is as stale as the goldfish that are stuck in between my couch cushions, it's at least refreshing when something, anything at all happens. Because the show puts you to sleep. The show gives you like this, like almost hypnosis of boredom. Like I swear to God, half the time when I was watching this show, the generic nature of everything and the convolution of its messy plot would have me passing out like it was a drug overdose. And then they'd have their goofy action come on and it was like this little hit of Narcan. I'm not trying to defend the action sequences because I know they're not great. I'm sure there's plenty of critiques that exist for the choreography, or really lack thereof, to the action scenes. But for me, I could at least appreciate the unapologetic silliness of it, and those fleeting moments of ephemeral enjoyment were overshadowed by hours of boredom and nonsensical, messy garbage. Narratively, this thing is as messy as it gets. I actually have a conspiracy theory that originally this was supposed to be its own generic fantasy show that they started filming, and then they got halfway through the season and then they just ran out of budget or it got canceled. But they didn't want it to go to waste, so they had these like 4 episodes worth of content that they already poured money into and they already had all the footage. So they knew they could probably sell and at least get eyes on it if they just slapped the Witcher IP on top of it, even though it had no real tie-in. So they did, like in an act of desperation, and then they like wrote in some loose Witcher lore to it, and it just doesn't work. But that's what I feel. I feel like they just made like a generic fantasy flick and then slapped The Witcher on it as the afterthought. It feels like this was just an incomplete product that got shipped out early. Like what I'm watching here is the pre-alpha. Usually when I'm ranting about something I didn't like, I'll give spoiler warnings and then talk about more specific reasons and examples from what I watched. But for this, I just don't even see the point. It's like not even really worth it, because I'm sure you weren't planning on watching it anyway. I wasn't either. I just, for some reason, got super curious as to what made this so bad that even critics were attacking it and saying it was shit. And I probably shouldn't have. This was Pandora's box that I shouldn't have even bothered opening, but I did, and I do regret it. So I'm not going to even really get into spoilers, but I would like to point out a couple of specific things that are more broad. Almost every character in the show is an elf, yet that has absolutely no difference in how they behave, how they act, or anything. It's not even elves like you're used to seeing in The Witcher. They don't act the same or anything. They're basically just humans with little pointy ears in here. And the pointy ears look like something you could have found at Party City for some of the characters. It's just, what was even the point of making them elves at that level? Like, why? It doesn't do anything, it doesn't add anything, and it's not even like an important point to the show, really, because it's not explored or done super well. Like, it's not really weaved into the narrative in any other way aside from them just basically being humans with long ears. I don't even get what the point of that was. It seems like they didn't give much thought to anything in this show, and it also feels like they didn't have a budget to do anything in this show either. It doesn't even look good. I felt like I was watching a CW production sometimes. Everything just feels like cheap. I don't know if it's just me, but I thought the visuals were really, really lacking, especially for a Netflix original here. There's absolutely times where I thought I was watching a fan project, but then the writing kicked in and I realized this is absolutely not done by Witcher fans. That much is very clear. By far the worst part is its writing, no doubt, but more specifically the writing for the characters. This is literally the first line in the show, and that sets the tone for the writing for the rest of the series. It's just so laughably bad so often. And the characters will sometimes just point blank tell you, like, this is very important to me because this, and this is how I'm feeling, without ever spending the time to build up relationships or build up these things. A good writer would be able to convey that without just point blank telling you, like almost breaking the fourth wall, like, hey, viewer, this is what you don't know about me and how I'm feeling right now, so let me explain it to you. It's just bad. Maybe that's because it's only 4 episodes, so the time constraints, it was hard to build a relationship, but to me it just feels like just general laziness as opposed to like a limitation on the amount of time they were allotted. The whole thing is just sloppy. It has nothing to do with The Witcher. It doesn't try to. I don't get the point. And I don't want to just keep focusing in on The Witcher Blood Origin specifically. I again want to, zoom out the lens here and talk about the bigger thing, the trend of taking beloved property like The Witcher and then giving it to people that don't fucking care and even openly, proudly disrespect it most of the time. Like with Halo. I keep bringing up Halo because that is the gift that keeps on giving. It is applicable to so much here. And to me, that is still the most egregious example of people that hated the property they were working on, tried to do something that they deemed better, and made something that is unforgivable. Something unholy, just a downright sin. It is criminal how bad the Halo show was. And that's kind of where everything's going. You have the Last of Us showrunner coming out saying, death in the games were just kind of pixels, so it's going to be different in the show. And now you have Witcher Blood Origin furthering this, where it's like, The Witcher, who cares about that? We're just going to use that name and then tell our own generic fantasy story. What is the fucking point? This is like that episode of SpongeBob with how many times we have to teach you this lesson, old man. Stop giving these beloved IPs to people, showrunners, producers, heads of studios that clearly don't give a fuck about it. What do you hope to accomplish? You don't get the fans of the property. You immediately lose them. You make an enemy out of them. You also don't get the general audience because they don't care about the IP to begin with. It's not like strong enough to bring in new eyes. It doesn't have its own legs because it's relying on the safety of the IP's name, and you deliver something half-baked like this show. Who are you even targeting? Because with Blood Origin, it's not Witcher fans. It's not fantasy fans. It's what? People that have like autoplay on or something, like YouTube kids, you know, they have an iPad and they just have random shit pop up. Like, who is this even geared towards? I don't get it. That's a question I asked with Halo because it wasn't geared towards Halo fans, and it wasn't geared towards just like general sci-fi fans either because it wasn't good enough. And now it's a question I'm asking here. Why? You have a dedicated audience with that IP. That franchise comes built in with eyeballs. So why not like make an ally out of them instead of an enemy? Show them that you actually care about it instead of bragging about not playing the games or not reading the stories that it comes from or whatever. Again, this is me talking about Halo, but I'm sure it applies to Blood Origin because clearly they have made a very public case of disrespecting the property. Henry Cavill's now no longer with The Witcher going forward after season 3. Again, why is this the norm to give this IP to people that don't like it to begin with? You're never going to get something good out of it. You just keep getting shit. More and more shit piled on top of itself in this giant septic tank of bad adaptations. And it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't. Like, you could absolutely just give it to people who do want to use it and make something great with it. I know it exists. So why do we keep doing this? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, I just wanted to rant a little bit today. That's really about it. See ya. There's an expression, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and it's meant to impart some wisdom upon you where if you just put everything into one area and it doesn't work out, your goose is cooked. So it's better not to just go all in on one thing, but instead have it spread out a little bit just for the sake of safety. But I want to tell you the story about what happens when you do put all of your eggs into one basket and you win. You catch a huge W. And this basket's name is Claude. About a month ago, I made a video covering one of the most desperate marketing plays I've ever seen from a major studio. Pixar released a desperate Hail Mary to try and drum up public interest in seeing their new film, Elemental. Elemental had a really rough opening box office performance. It was kind of a disastrous first quarter here for the movie. It was looking like it was going to be a colossal flop because there was just really no hype and no one was really getting excited enough to go actually see the film. So it was looking rough. It was looking like me in a tall person contest. It was bad. It was hard to look at. And in their moment of weakness, they turned to the dark side. TikTok turbo cringe. To try and appeal to the Zoomers, they hatched a nefarious scheme.
Yo, yo, yo! Cause check it out. All grown up. And I smell good.
This was an official post on their Twitter account as well. The caption said, Claude's got the whole theater rooting for him or something like that. So Claude was more revered and cheered for than Jesus Christ himself if he was resurrected again. Everyone was losing their mind over Claude in a fucking fantasy dimension, not reality. Very clearly, this is all fake. But it's such an interestingly delusional idea because this is a brand new film brand new character, and this is their first time ever seeing Claude. Claude is a minor character in this movie. Like, no one had ever heard of him before. Why the fuck would the theater be cheering for him like they had just witnessed their home team win the fucking Super Bowl? Now, obviously, most of that cacophony of chaos is composed of stock cheering sound effects, but there is actually some original property in there as well from people that must have been called in to just make a lot of noise. They went to the Elemental intern staff and said, look, if you guys want to keep this job, we're gonna need you to pop a fucking blood vessel in your neck cheering for our character Claude for this viral video we're trying to make. Jesus Christ, we need you now! So they just reluctantly kicked their feet and said, oh my god, whatever. Oh, Claude! Ah, Claude! Woo-wee! And then it's like, alright, print it. And now we'll shake the camera around a little bit because our cameraman's also losing his fucking mind like he's getting thrown into a washing machine. It's like footage out of the Cloverfield movie. So that was the marketing campaign push they tried to make with Claude. Claude became the spearhead for the salvation operation of Elemental. And you know what's crazy? It worked. I just read the most recent report on Elemental's performance. It is the second highest grossing animated film of 2023, just behind Super Mario Bros. And above Across the Spider-Verse. That's right. It fucking out-earned Across the Spider-Verse. It just goes to show you, never underestimate Claude. Like, I guess that's the takeaway here. Claude is some kind of Cronenberg-esque deity demon of success. Like, somehow they were able to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat thanks to an extremely strong international performance in the box office, especially in South Korea. Apparently it fucking crushed it there. And it was able to turn around what was destined, fated to be a flop, and turned it into a financial success. Wild. Absolutely incomprehensible. I thought this was for sure kaput. I didn't think this stood a chance. I thought it flatlined. They must have called Doctor Strange in, got him on the horn and said, look, we need you to look into the multiverse and tell us which one has us making a profit off of this film. And he found the only multiverse solution. Claude. That was the answer. I'm gonna be honest, I'm starting to suspect foul play. Something smells fishy here. This movie fell between the butt cheeks. No one was going to see it. And then they somehow pushed Claude really hard with, like, marketing such as this, like POV Claude actually lobotomizing an entire auditorium because they lost their mind looking at him. And somehow it worked? Like, I just refuse to believe Claude wields that kind of power. I don't know how this happened. I feel like they have to be lying about these numbers, just because it would be extremely embarrassing if it really was a massive flop. But I feel like that'd be highly illegal, and you could probably check the numbers through third-party sources, so it's probably not fake. It's just, I don't know, it's just so shocking that it somehow turned this around. It's making me believe in miracles. Like, who knows, maybe they'll re-release Morbius for the third time, and this time, Claude will endorse it, and then all of a sudden that shit fucking explodes straight to the moon. It's just, how? It out-earned Across the Spider-Verse, which is one of the best animated films ever made. This is an example of someone that was drowning, but then drank all of the water they were drowning in, so that way they were no longer drowning, and now their belly's nice and full. Elemental squeaked it out. And I want to be clear, this is not another example of me being wrong about a prediction. In my initial video I made, laughing at the goofy marketing material, I did say, you can never count out Claude. You never know what he's truly capable of, and man did he put his best foot forward here, and he saved Elemental for them. So I wasn't wrong. I was doubtful, of course, but I never outright said this movie is, 6 feet under, doomed to fail. I don't think. Maybe I did. Actually, there's a really good chance I did. But I also did say there is a chance Claude could save it, and he did. So my little ears are hearing that I wasn't wrong. I really pinned the tail on the donkey here. I knew this could happen, and it did. So, yeah. I just wanted to give you that kind of report on how Elemental was salvaged, thanks to Claude, the hero. And since I'm keeping you all updated on that, I might as well update you on a couple other things. I'm doing my first ever live event on September 8th. It'll be the 8th, 9th, and 10th. It's going to be a giant party as well as like a meet and greet so you can meet myself and the team. And we're going to be watching and going crazy for our Moist Esports Apex team as they hopefully take home the World Championship. It'll be about 5 hours per day. Tickets are still for sale at strazcenter.org. It's $25 per day, or if you want to do all 3 days, it'll be $60. So just wanted to give you an update on that. There's about half of the tickets left, so just keeping everyone in the know there. And another thing I also want to update people on is Plague Seeker. The limited edition variant covers are also almost gone, so I just wanted to give you all an update there in case you wanted to check out Plague Seeker issue 0. It's a comic book series I wrote myself this time around with Jackson, and I think it is an absolute fucking banger. So, in case you missed the animation we dropped to celebrate issue 0, I'll just go ahead and play the whole fucking thing here as well. The tickets to both Plague Seeker as well as the tickets to the live event are going to be in the description of the video as well.
1,000 years ago, humankind ruled the earth. Even in their failings, they prospered across the planet. But that would all change in the blink of an eye. Those who persevered beyond the impact never truly survived. The mutations made them something more than human. It drove them mad. Those closest to the calamity were transformed completely. Known as plagues, their overwhelming power leaves all helpless as they seek to dominate our world. The worst of them were born where nothing had the right to survive. Terrifying beings known to us as the Great Plagues. 8 in total spread themselves across the planet, each ruling their own territory. Without mercy, they shaped our world. And yet there was one that not a soul dare speak of. Born at the very center of the impact. A plague far different than all the others. He bore the strongest curse of them all. An insatiable hunger to devour the other 8. The Plague Seeker.
This evening I was deep in thought while taking a shower. With my bare bottom pointed towards the shower head, I began to ponder, is it possible to actually sustain a show just from it being hated by everyone? To produce a show that nobody likes but everyone tunes in because they like to make fun of it. The scientific term for this phenomenon is hate watching. People that watch something knowing full well they won't like it, but they can't help but watch it anyway. The reason why I got into this little existential crisis wondering about this topic is because last night news broke that Velma Season 2 is reportedly already being worked on, which is without a doubt the worst news the world has received since the bubonic plague. Velma is a show that's unanimously hated by every single person on this planet with a pulse. So the question begs to be asked, why would they even consider making a Season 2? Even critics hate this show. So who is this for? No one wants it. Is it truly so popular from hate watching that they can justify another season just to continue rage baiting? It's an interesting conundrum, and I've seen it being discussed on Twitter. I believe the big tweet about it says something to the effect of, you hate watched, but you still watched, and that's all that matters to the suits. And I think there's a lot of truth to that statement. We've known for a long time journalism actually thrives off rage-baiting articles. I'm pretty sure GameSpot is kept afloat entirely from their dog shit movie and TV show reviews because they come up with the most contrarian and most baffling reviews I've ever seen. For those that don't know, GameSpot gave Resident Evil the Netflix show a 9 out of 10 and the Halo show an 8 out of 10. There is no dimension in this fucking multiverse where that makes any sense. If you spit in my face and kicked me in my nutsack and then showed me these GameSpot reviews, I would be more offended by the reviews than your disrespect to my sack in my face. It's just unreal to think that these are real articles that got published. And it's not just these two, but these are by far the most egregious examples that I can think of off the top of my head. And this concept of profiting off anger extends to everything in the journalism field. There are so many articles written with the sole purpose, it seems, to incite controversy and spark hatred. Because when you get upset, you're clicking the articles, which I guess is good for their bottom line. Now, does that same concept extend to a show like Velma? There's a lot of evidence to suggest it does, especially in the case of Velma. Right now, they're wiggling their fingers celebrating that Velma had the biggest premiere day for an HBO Max original animated. But this is such a hollow victory because there's no HBO original animations left since everything got canceled. They're competing in a goddamn ghost town. It's just crickets for animation on there. So of course it was going to have the biggest premiere. But is it still just genuinely popular, like even just by normal standards? I think it is. With the amount of clips floating around on Twitter, the amount of discussion around the episodes, I actually think the show is very popular from people solely watching for the sake of insulting it. Which is fascinating because it looks like this show's going to soar to profitability for the network solely off just being this public toilet for people to shit in. This is just the internet's punching bag right now. The show fucking sucks. It sucks fuck. It's terrible. And everyone knows it. They can't help but watch it and stay glued to it to see how bad it gets. It tickles a morbid curiosity deeply embedded in the DNA of every human being, where when you see a car accident, you can't help but slow down just to observe the carnage and see what's going on over there. That's Velma. It's a repulsive train wreck people can't help but check out. It's just like when, my boy George got curious and it led to all kinds of adventures. But the only adventure you go on when checking out Velma is despair and boredom and just pure insufferable misery. It's not a fun bad show by any means. This isn't like The Room or something where it's so bad it's good and it becomes enjoyable. Velma is an absolute chore to watch. It's more like going into a lecture that's hosted by the worst person you've ever met on Twitter. And then they also have a stand-up routine from someone that came from Tumblr. It's just a bad show no matter how you spin it. All of the jokes don't land. Every joke is pretty much the exact same formula with no real punchline except for Fred's got a tiny wiener. It's just a shitty overall show, but people are still watching. So much so that we might doom the world with a season 2 of this thing. That would be like the apocalypse or the Armageddon written about in the Bible if there's actually a Velma season 2 that premieres next year. I can't even imagine how the world could have deserved such an awful fate. But it's so interesting. Like, I can't help but just be truly blown away by the fact that the studio and everyone involved here has to see the reception. They know everyone hates it. But numbers are numbers. And these numbers are astronomical, I suppose, because goddamn, a season 2 already. Very bold strategy, but I mean, maybe this is an actual legitimate thing that studios might start doing, is just making shows with the sole purpose of making people angry from watching them. I decided to do my due diligence and check against another recently hated show. This was universally slapped by everyone that watched it. This is The Witcher Blood Origin, and it was the #1 show on Netflix during its opening week, it seems. So, regardless of the quality of the show, it looks like as long as you can make people talk about it, whether it's positive or negative, it really does just benefit the network overall. Maybe when it comes to shows like this, there really is no such thing as bad publicity, because these are two very recent and very quick examples of shows that everyone despised, nobody defended, and it had no fans or supporters. There are more fans of Catching the Common Cold than there are of Velma or The Witcher Blood Origin, and yet they both pulled good numbers, it seems, solely from being hated. It's interesting. So, going forward, here's what I propose. Stop hate watching. Let me do it for you. I'll watch all of these stinkers and I'll let you know just how bad they are. I don't think shows and networks should be rewarded for churning out poop like this. So, I'll be the only one to watch them. Let Velma Season 2 roll around and it has a single viewer. Me. I'll fill you in on all the nitty-gritty details of how awful the show is, no problem. I don't mind doing that. I'll bear the burden of their sin and I'll carry it for all of us. I'll watch these god-awful shows because I love watching terrible shit. Even when it's not fun, like Velma, there's no fun to be had. That's a word that's forbidden to be used in the same sentence as this show. But I still do it because there's something about the way that I'm programmed that just has to watch awful media or play awful games. I feel this compulsion to do it, and I can't fight that demon. You know, if there's something that has a 1.3 on IMDb like Velma currently does, I'm like a moth to a flame. I'm like a dog chasing a car, except I know exactly what to do when I catch it. I fucking watch the goddamn show, and I'm upset the entire time. I wear a frown on my face, and it's this vicious cycle, and I just love it. I don't know what to tell you. So just let me do that for all of us. I'll be the only hate watcher from now on. So that way they stop getting good numbers and good returns on absolutely horrible shows and programs. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this because I found it very interesting. Assuming, of course, Velma Season 2 really is in the works. That would be very upsetting, but also, the more I think about it, not surprising because of just how popular it is to hate on it. So I'm guessing there is a lot of people that continue to watch it. Though I do imagine they're going to experience a significant drop-off in viewers. Those numbers are going to absolutely plummet like Netflix stock last year. It's because now everyone knows it's not fun bad. Everyone's given it a chance to try and be entertainingly shitty, and it's not. It's just not entertaining. It's just shitty. So they're not going to continue watching, or at least most of them probably aren't. So there's not going to be as many viewers going forward. But maybe they still just had enough already from just the 2 episodes. Couldn't tell you, but just thought this was something interesting to think about, and that's about it. So yeah. Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of the most cherished cartoons ever made. It's an absolute masterpiece. And when you think of Avatar: The Last Airbender, do you also think of Game of Thrones? I imagine for all of you with a functioning frontal lobe, the answer to that question is a resounding no. Which means you are not a showrunner for the live-action Netflix adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, because for some reason, these absolute goofball-brained goobers think that they needed to change the show around to appeal to a Game of Thrones audience for some reason. I don't even think it's necessary to even entertain that delusion, but I'll do it briefly. Why? Let's just state the obvious here. Avatar aired on Nickelodeon. It's a cartoon. That is a children's station. Now, of course, Avatar is a cartoon that transcends just like a child-appreciated show. All ages can appreciate it, but it is family-friendly. Game of Thrones has titties and blood and shit out the wazoo. It's totally different. Why would you want Avatar to be morphed into something Game of Thrones adjacent? It makes no sense. That is the most out-of-touch Netflix corporate suit decision I could have ever imagined out of a boardroom. Oh, we need to tap into the Game of Thrones audience. Why? Also, for the most part, the Game of Thrones audience is dead and buried with the fucking colossal flop of Season 8 being such a fumble. Now, of course, House of the Dragon helped revive it a little bit, but even still, this is just beating a dead horse. No, it's more than that. This is like mutilating the corpse of a dead horse. It's disgusting. You're defiling it. I just can't understand that decision at all. It's like if you were doing a live-action adaptation for the Care Bears and making it dark and gritty for no reason. Yeah, we saw all the whimsy and the childlike fun of Care Bears and we wiped our ass with it. We said, it's time that Care Bears gets with the program in the 21st century. It's time that we adapt Care Bears to fit the modern audience, and we wanted to tap into fans of the Human Centipede franchise to welcome them into the Care Bears universe. Just, what are you doing? What are you doing? Now, I already made a video talking about, like, the first trailer that dropped for the Avatar series, and like I said, visually, I think it looks pretty good, and I had somewhat of an optimistic outlook on it, but I had to mention that I was still very skeptical because the creators of Avatar walked away from this Netflix adaptation quite a while ago, stating creative differences. So the actual creators that put together this masterpiece left it because they didn't like the direction it was going. And now, as it gets closer to release, it comes out at the end of this month, it's pretty clear why they left. It's because they're changing all of the most important fundamental aspects of Avatar. It's very clear why the creators would have abandoned this pile of shit. It's not looking good. Visually, it's certainly better than M. Night Shyamalan's Sin from 2010 with the Last Airbender movie, but narratively, it's looking like it could be even worse somehow. Over the last 3 days, there's been 3 bombshell new pieces of information from staff of the show that just really raises a lot of red flags and sounds the alarm. So this was the first one about wanting to appeal to Game of Thrones audiences, the showrunner saying that it couldn't just be for kids. Dummy, it was never just for kids. Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of those few cartoons that everyone of all ages sings the praises of because it appeals to everybody. It was never just for kids. And you don't need to prove that it's not for kids by introducing a Game of Thrones style narrative to it for the drama. I don't even know how they're planning on weaving that in there, but I can't imagine that's going to land very well. Also went on to say it had to also appeal to the people who are big fans of Game of Thrones, so it had to feel grounded and mature and adult in that way too. That's the tightrope that we have to walk. No, you don't. You can just not walk that tightrope because it's nonsensical to do that in the first place. This is like if Nintendo would have come out right before the Mario Bros. Movie released and said, we knew in order for Mario Bros. To succeed, we needed to appeal to John Wick fans, so we had to make sure Mario Bros. Felt grounded, mature, and adult in that way too. It was our tightrope we had to walk. It's just fucking baffling. It's mind-boggling. Why does Avatar: The Last Airbender need to appeal to Game of Thrones fans in any way, shape, or form? The idiot benders over there at Netflix have lost their marbles. They're off their gourd right now with this direction. And this is only one of 3 big alarming things they've said. The biggest one is by far their decision to completely change one of Sokka's main character arcs that he goes through in the show. Apparently they're toning down Sokka's sexism in the show, stating, I feel like we also took out the element of how sexist Sokka was. I feel like there were a lot of moments in the original show that were iffy. He is a flawed character, that's the whole point. I don't know why studios are so afraid of flawed characters now, where every character needs to just be morally perfect off rip, so then they're extraordinarily uninteresting and don't really have any character development. The whole point was, Sokka started off very flawed, and he goes through this development where he learns, oh, women can be badass warriors too. It's not just men. It's a huge component of his character and his growth. That is one of the main things that he first goes through. And apparently they've just wiped their ass with that. Now, they didn't say that they've entirely removed it. They've said they've toned it down. Of course, no telling how much. But still, why do that? Why have that play a backseat when in the show that was pivotal to his character growth and development? I also find it comical that this aims to be more mature and adult, seemingly wanting to appeal to Game of Thrones fans, and yet they're watering down the elements of the original children's program because they believe adults are too fragile to handle it. That's just so laughable to me. Kids could handle it back then, but times are different now. We need to make sure that the adults are coddled as much as possible. It's gotta be Weenie Hut Jr. and super sterile. But we also have to make sure it appeals to Game of Thrones fans. And once again, this begs the question I've asked a million times when it comes to this shit. Why are you adapting this in the first place? What is the point of your live-action adaptation if you're going to change the most fundamental elements of what you're taking from? You immediately alienate the fans, and you're not bringing in any new fans from doing it. You just stand to lose. It's a lose-lose situation all around, like we saw with Halo Season 1. Now, Season 2 does appear to be going a different direction. Maybe they've learned from the mistakes. We'll see. But this is once again falling into the same fucking mistakes of why are you adapting something that you don't even seem to like or get in the first place, with further evidence from their most recent statement saying that Aang will no longer be, going on any side quests or taking any detours. He's just going to be all business all the time, which runs counter to one of Aang's big character traits, that he just wants to be a kid, that he wants to have a childhood. In fact, the whole thing starts with him running away from his responsibilities. He never wanted to be the Avatar, and he wanted to just be a kid. But in this show, I guess that's not going to exist. He's just always going to be all business all the time. And they have to know that. They're making the conscious decision to just fuck everything because they believe they can do it better. And that hubris has ruined so many of these in the past. Avatar: The Last Airbender has to be one of the most talked about shows probably ever. If you just type in Avatar The Last Airbender on YouTube, you'll get thousands upon thousands of video essays going over all the nuance of the show, all of the plot elements, and everything that makes it so special. It is a show that has stood the test of time and is still actively discussed to this day, so many years later. So there's no way the people that worked on this are somehow ignorant to these things, but they are just choosing to completely change them for some inexplicable reason. I don't get it. Why adapt this then, if that's the case? A lot of money is going into this. You can tell that it's a high-budget production just from the trailers. Visually, it looks pretty impressive, especially compared to the 2010 counterpart. So why waste all that money? You could have just done a more faithful adaptation, and I've always said I don't really see a point in adapting something one-to-one. I do believe you need to take creative liberties, but not when it comes down to the most fundamental elements of what makes that property special in the first place. You can interject your own style and your own creativity into that universe while still keeping the DNA of it intact. It really isn't that difficult, and it has been done successfully in the past. Like, it just takes some care. I hate to keep referencing this, but I really thought they did a great job. The One Piece live action. It had the creator on board, and you can really see that that helped. This had the creators on board, and they clearly must have been ignored, and all of their advice fell on deaf ears because they eventually walked away from it, and now we're left with what seems to be an impending disaster in the Avatar universe here. Yet another live-action Avatar blemish. It doesn't compute with me how many times they have to learn this lesson. These shows, when you're taking from a beloved IP, need to at least pay respect to it. This seems to be actively against it. We needed to change the whole show around so it wasn't just for kids, so it could appeal to Game of Thrones fans. When again, it never was just for kids in the first place. We had to change Sokka pretty substantially here because the whole sexism thing, it just wasn't sitting right with us. It was very iffy. Even though that was extremely important for him as part of his character growth. It's not like they used his sexism for, like, jokes or to put people down or belittle women or anything. It was never used for, like, shock or anything. It was actually used because it showed that he was flawed and needed to grow. And he did grow. Like, it's just so fucking frustrating. Like, I don't get it. Why even keep doing these adaptations? So yeah, I'm not optimistic about this show. I guess we'll see. Maybe it surprises me and everyone else and it comes out and it's a banger. I just don't have any hope for that being the case anymore because of every interview they do just making it sound more and more dog shitty. That's really about it. So yeah. Hey, earlier today I uploaded a video about piracy that was mainly just a rant about my position on this blossoming debate that's unfolding every day about piracy, as well as me talking about the nincompoops at Nintendo shutting down one of the most popular emulators, Yuzu. And it was just this very passionate rant. So passionate, in fact, that some of you may have noticed something a bit awry. In the intro of that video, I said there was 2 topics I wanted to discuss, and only one of them was piracy. Just like Parmesan in a bowl of spaghetti and meatballs, I got too lost in the sauce, and I only talked about piracy in that video. I completely omitted the second half of what I wanted to discuss, and it wasn't until after the video went live that I had that eureka, come to Jesus moment. Gee willikers, I completely forgot the second half of that. Scratching at the hairs on my chinny chin chin, I sat here stewing in my own filth and ultimately decided, fuck it, we'll do it live and I'll just make a dedicated video for this second topic, which is great shows ruining their own momentum by taking these long mid-season breaks where they stagger their release and absolutely butcher all the hype they built up. Invincible is the latest victim of this, but it's not exclusive to just Invincible. As all of you know, I'm a huge fan of this show. I thought the first season was a damn near masterpiece. And Season 2, Part 1, I really liked. And as you know, there was a break. The 4th episode of Season 2 ended in November of 2023, and now Part 2 just started yesterday. So there's this long gap in between that where all of the hype just peters out like a little wet fart and people forget about it because things don't stay in the public consciousness for very long. And when you end it in the middle of something, people usually don't let it like hang there for that long. So many people didn't even know that the second part was rolling around, which includes me. I didn't know until I saw a couple of people I follow on Twitter mention that they were surprised it's back, because they forgot. It just doesn't make sense, this trend of stopping in the middle of shit. Like, take for example, you're on the most exciting roller coaster ride ever. You're on the Mummy ride at Universal. You're pumping your fist. Yeah, Brendan Fraser. Yeah, fuck you, Emotep. Boo. And then in the middle of the ride, it just stops. It breaks down. You're having a great time. It stops. And then you just have to wait for it to get back on track and you finish the ride. And it just doesn't feel as satisfying because it's been broken up now. So when I first read about the hiatus that season 2 was going to be taking, I didn't mind that much because I thought it was some kind of production necessity where something went wrong along the way and they had to take the break. And I think that's excusable in that circumstance, but that's apparently not the case. Robert Kirkman gave a pretentious goober answer for the hiatus, saying fans will need time to process what happened when it's all said and done, which I think is ridiculous. You think people have just been sitting here processing it for the last fucking 5 months? Absolutely not. People forgot about it because it didn't finish, and a lot of people don't even know that it's back. So he said it's a little bit of a production process just because ramping things up has taken a lot longer than they thought, but also this is something we've done with every season of The Walking Dead, which is not a great thing to pull from since the majority of people dropped The Walking Dead along the way. It's a show that very much overstayed its welcome for the majority of the audience, and if there's any lesson you're ever going to learn from The Walking Dead, it's to do things differently than The Walking Dead did it, because it's an example of falling off and being a victim of their own hubris by doing things poorly, by drawing things out, and by making the audience get tired of it. So he continues, I think narratively it's kind of cool to have that pause to digest what you've experienced. And when you see episode 4 of season 2, you may need a break. It's a big episode. It's definitely a mid-season finale kind of episode. And then he goes on, with everything going on in that time of year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and a lot of family time, I think a lot of shows get lost in the shuffle there, so I think it's a good time to take a pause, and narratively it's going to make things hit a little bit harder, and people will know what I'm talking about when the season launches. Put down the orb of confusion, Robert. That is not how reality works. It's not going to make anything hit harder, it takes the impact away from it, because now you've had all this build-up for nothing, and now there's 5 months of stagnation. This break does nothing but take the wind out of the sails, and you can see that by the response right now to part 2 dropping. The new episode is a banger, but there's a lot of people that don't even know the new episode is out because they've forgotten about it because of that break. It's just silly. And there's so many examples of this now because one of the most criminal release schedules ever was for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean, which is part 6 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This is a masterclass in how to completely ruin hype. So, Stone Ocean is beloved, and it's one I was really excited for. There was so much hype around it, and then it turns out they were breaking this up into 3 waves. So the first bit of drip feeding for the first part of Stone Ocean was in December of 2021, and people really enjoyed it, people were celebrating its release, but everyone was understandably disappointed that this wasn't the full package. They had to wait for the next part to roll around with no set release date. And then it turns out that second part doesn't even come around until September 1st of 2022, almost a year later. So that by that point, everyone's already forgotten about it. They've already completely moved on from it. So then there wasn't nearly as many people turning up to finish Stone Ocean. And I'm in that anime clubhouse here because at that point it just becomes homework where I need to rewatch the first part of Stone Ocean so I can experience the second part, which should have just been done together. Just wait until everything's complete, like content complete, and then just do it like a normal season. Like that's the sensible way of doing it, or since it's Netflix and they usually do the binge model, just drop it all at once so I can go at my own pace through it without needing to take this year-long break in there where I just fucking get all foggy on the details of things. And to add insult to injury, that second part that came out in September still wasn't the end. They had to come back for a third release of Stone Ocean in December of that year. So there was another gap. Luckily that wasn't as long, but still the damage had been done, and so many people had already dropped it by that point and didn't finish Stone Ocean. I imagine if I asked for a show of hands who appreciates a break in the middle of something they're enjoying, there'd be no hands that fly up. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, who's gonna be watching Invincible during like a crucial moment and be like, whoa, stop, pump the brakes, Buster, wait a minute. I'm gonna need a few months to process what's going on here. Stop, I'm having too much fun. Please, stop, I need it to stop for now. Oh, what a ride, what an adventure. I can't wait to finish this. 3 months down the line, 4 months down the line. That's the optimal way of experiencing it. It just ruins the fun. No one wants to be doing something, having a great time, smile on their face, just for it to stop in the middle of it before it finishes. Like, you're jerking off and you don't want to just stop before you come, right? Well, I mean, I guess you could if you're, like, really into edging, I guess, but that's a small number of people compared to, like, the grand scheme of masturbatory practices. The point I'm making is, like, if you're in the middle of something and enjoying it, having it stop before it's done isn't satisfying, it's underwhelming. There's just nothing to really be gained with that. You're better off just waiting until everything is ready so you can avoid having these long pauses, this long hiatus in there, because again, all it does is fall out of people's attention, and it becomes kind of a nuisance where, damn, I was really enjoying that, now I have to wait 4 months just for it to pick up in the middle of where this story was. It's not like the season ended and you're just impatient waiting for season 3. This is season 2 that they split up into 2 parts for no real reason. At least not from how Robert Kirkman explains it. Maybe there was more to the production side, like they wanted to polish it off more, but even then, just wait till it's all ready then in that case. Don't bother releasing it in 2 parts. That was another thing Attack on Titan did that I didn't really like, and I talked about that a lot. I hated how Attack on Titan kept doing, like, final part 1 of part 2, but here's the final parts, part 1, 2, and 3, and then part 1, 2, and 2 of part 2 and 1 and 3. Like, you're doing all kinds of weird fucking arithmetic with these parts that make no sense. Just wait until things are complete and make, like, normal comprehensible seasons without, like, breaks in between and, like, final parts and then the final chapters parts and all that. Like, parts is becoming, like, this crazy buzzword that's associated for everything, where everything's, like, broken up into little parts. So, yeah, that just made me a little frustrated. Hopefully this trend doesn't continue with more shows down the line, because, man, it's a fucking headache. That's about it. So, yeah.